Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar, How Wave Broadband is Transforming its Sales Strategy Using Location Intelligence, sponsored by Connected to Fibre. Before we begin, I wanted to cover a few housekeeping items. On the right-hand side of your screen is the Q&A. If you have any questions during the webcast, you can type your question into the Q&A box and submit your questions to our speakers. All questions will be saved, so if we don't get to answer you, we may follow up via email. At the bottom of your audience console are multiple application widgets you can use. If you have any technical difficulties, please click on the yellow Help widget. Here you can find answers to common questions. A copy of today's slide deck is available for download in the green Resource List widget. At the end of the webinar, we'll ask you for your feedback. A survey will pop open on your screen and will only take 1 minute to complete. Your feedback is extremely helpful. An on-demand version of the webcast will be available about 1 day after the event and can be accessed using the same audience link that was sent to you earlier today. I would now like to turn the event over to our moderator, Telecoms.com's Head of Intelligence, Wei Shi.
Thank you, Becky, and a warm welcome to everyone. I'm Wei Shi from Telecoms.com Intelligence, and I'll be your host for this webinar. The theme of today's webinar is Transforming Sales Strategy with Location Intelligence. The days are gone when network providers could simply roll out connections to a location, lighting up the buildings, then seeing the revenues streaming in. With more and more locations already on the grid, CSP's expansion activities now need to be well planned to maximize the return. The cost of connecting to a new location is simply too high and is often sunk. And as a matter of fact, according to a Telecoms.com survey, 48% of respondents of the survey would hesitate to roll out ultra broadband networks because of the uncertain returns on high investments. In order to increase win rates, network providers sometimes would use their own sales and marketing teams to put together information related to the location to target. But often the information stitched together in this way is either too broad or not up to date or not reconciled between one another, or in worst cases, all of the above. Instead, the connectivity industry participants, including the network providers, need to gain deep location-specific insights into locations that they could serve. This is what we call location intelligence. When done properly, location intelligence can have a material impact on a company's revenue stream. At the same time, the sales and marketing teams can focus on what they are paid to do, and that is to make the best use of the location intelligence to deliver value to their customers, to optimize the organization's sales and marketing activities, to maximize the return on investments, and to drive significant revenue growth. And that is exactly what is going to be discussed at this webinar. I'm joined today by Ben Edmond, CEO and founder of Connected to Fibre, and Deborah Badit, Senior Project Manager of Wave Broadband. Ben will first give us an in-depth introduction to location intelligence, and Deborah will explore how Wave Broadband is positively transforming its sales strategy by leveraging location intelligence. Just before I hand over to Ben and Deborah, I'd like to repeat what Becky said at the beginning. We invite our audience to submit questions throughout the presentation, and we will have about 15 minutes for Q&A at the end. And we like our webinars to be as interactive as possible, so there will be one poll question during the presentation. We'd love for you to answer it. So now, without further ado, I'll hand over to Ben and Deborah to introduce themselves and to start the presentation.
Thank you, Wei. I'm Deborah Badit, Senior Project Manager with Wave Broadband. I've been with the company over 2 years. I've been tasked with making the impossible possible. I have extensive telecom experience. I've managed sales, engineering, and customer support teams. I've been involved with launching internal sales and provisioning tools, as well as working with vendors to integrate software solutions. So I'm really excited about today's webinar, and I'll turn it over to Ben.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. And for all, my name is Ben Edmond. I'm the CEO and founder of Connected to Fiber. We are a growth enablement platform built very specifically for the connectivity industry. And I'm going to talk about location intelligence and the role it has in growth in the market today. We appreciate the opportunity to dive into this, really meaty subject. When we step back and look at, what a service provider requires to answer from a growth perspective, there's some critical questions out there that are fundamental to the success of the service provider strategy. One of those questions really centers around the understanding of the total addressable market that a service provider can deliver their connectivity and services to. That entails which buildings, the physicality of reach, what locations are truly accessible, whether it's on net, whether it's near net, whether it's through partner networks. And what's the strategy to optimally serve those buildings? Is it lease connectivity, build connectivity, partner connectivity? And how can you maximize your return on marketing spend in a very competitive but a critical industry, ensuring that your message and your reach are optimally pointed to the market that's going to best respond to those messages. When you look at the growth questions, it's not just about the physicality. That's the starting point, but perspective needs to really be layered into the equation. Perspectives like how many competitors are each individual building, not just from a market level, but down to the granular view that each location truly is its own marketplace and connectivity. What's the demand look like for those locations? Tenant profiles. How do those tenants use technology to drive their overall landscape? Are they in the cloud? Are they consuming data center space? All those perspectives matter in terms of figuring out how to make your sales force more productive. What are the true levers, and how do you point to the demand that's growing, versus demand that might be stagnant in certain verticals or geographic areas? And those are the questions that are sort of the centerpiece to a growth strategy out there from a service provider standpoint that we look at. When you think about those questions, there's a fundamental fog that's layered over this market in terms of the fragmentation of the last mile, the complexity of what's going on inside of the buildings, riddled with bad data. Data around addresses has been a challenge for not just our industry, but industries across the spectrum around, understanding what is true and where that truth is. Not just knowing the address, but how do you know the proximity to your fiber plant? How do you know what networks can reach there? From an access perspective, looking at the competition partners, today there's over 2,319 physical networks that exist in the last mile in the United States. How do you know where they serve, and what are partner opportunities? What are competitive opportunities? The opaqueness of the industry for the last number of decades has made that a real challenge. And when you look at a building itself and building fiber, which is a very capital intensive process, the uncertainty around building access agreements, the easements needed to go from public right of way to private easements into the building itself makes the ROI somewhat of a clear picture that's really hard to formulate plans around. And when you look at all these layers of, fogginess or opaqueness, it really slows down the buying process. And today, it's a world of buying process, not a selling process. really need to understand the landscape of how business is consuming network in reaction to changes that are going on, fundamental changes that are going on in their IT stack, in the growth landscape that they have, and being able to understand, how to wade through the last mile fog to get those opportunities and tack the growth opportunity. When we look at, that last mile fog and focus in on a few things like bad data, the current state of data, from a legacy standpoint has been broken. Excel spreadsheets and Google Earth files have dominated the use case of how information is shared, how we analyze things, how we communicate between partners, between customers. And unfortunately, it's left lots of voids in the market that slows down the process of growth. If you look at spreadsheets, and just think about an Excel spreadsheet with address information and business data, there's no validation process to what is a true address. There's no structure to really define, is this the same location with multiple tenants? You're relying on a static piece of information. But ultimately, whether it's a marketing organization, a sales organization, a planning organization, or others, today this is over 80% of the activity that we see in the marketplace. And it's a real challenge out there, and a fundamentally recognized challenge. And think about it when you share, that data with a big partner, a wholesale customer, or a channel partner, and it has those same, address challenges within it. It means that you're missing opportunities. You share address data with missing zip code or a number or a street not formatted properly, and their systems can't clean and process it, then you're missing the opportunity when they create demand. And those are some real challenges to growth that are holding back the industry in a time that's absolutely booming from an opportunity perspective with all the change going on. This is why we think, fundamentally, location intelligence should be a cornerstone to a provider's growth strategy. And it really creates a foundation to drive and maximize your participation in the market. Because fundamentally, if you can see the total addressable market, and every location with authority, all the tenants inside, you can attack that opportunity. And without that information, without that data and the structure and the tools to consume it, you could be missing opportunities to participate. If you have that foundation built with location intelligence, understanding your network, your ability to serve the locations that it's on net, near net, and with partners, and then you communicate that out with authority to the market, you're maximizing your participation. When you see that your targeting strategy should be centered around where you have a competitive strength and the ability to serve based on that location intelligence, then you can start layering in aspects of your partner strategy to improve your fit rate with those enterprise customers. Really, once again, maximizing your sales and marketing investment. And ideally, you want to invest in your pricing strategy. For a long time, peanut butter has been the pricing strategy du jour in the industry because of the lack of the tools to do something else, where one market was priced this way for on-net and another market was priced this way for on-net and a different price for near-net. And the reality is each individual location has its own competitive and demand dynamics. And once you understand those competitive dynamics, you can start applying a pricing strategy that allows you to increase price to maximize your growth from a yield perspective, or decrease price when a competitive dynamic determines that you need to do that to enable a higher win rate, both leading to a better growth outcome. And all of that is really, enabled from a true location intelligence strategy and a key aspect in growth in today's market. And why now? Why does it matter from a location intelligence? Well, there's some fundamental changes going on that drive the connectivity industry. And some of those changes, are focused on the industry itself, and some of them are focused on the enterprise or business customers' changes that are driving changes in consumption, like hybrid cloud. The traditional architecture for applications in the enterprise has been a client-server architecture. It's shifted to third-party data centers, and now there's this massive shift going on, from a combination of third-party data centers and public cloud. And that hybrid deployment requires a new network technology and topology, and the enterprise to step back and say how they should do something. Well, change creates an opportunity. And when you understand your location intelligence from a perspective of who is the most potential likely to change from an enterprise, where is the change happening, what cloud is being used from an enterprise perspective, what data center is being used, where the headquarters decisions are, all that fundamentally is centered around a location intelligence strategy. And it's driving in today's market massive amounts of change. The push to the edge is another macro trend happening right now. We think about not just from a content perspective, but the application stack going in and winning the day in the cloud. Because of the size, because of the popularity, they're needing to move that application stack closer, not back into the four walls of the building, but closer to the users. That push to the edge changes the network, changes the complexity. And everyone's heard of 5G. And 5G is, while it's not to the device level today in services, the actual change in new infrastructure, new antennas is being built out now. To participate in that revenue opportunity, you need to understand what pieces of street furniture, what towers, what buildings are going to be the recipients and beneficiaries of the demand, and understand the competitive landscape that's happening as well. When we look at connected to fiber, this is why we exist. We believe fundamentally that location matters. We've built from the ground up a view of how to manage and get location data from a connectivity industry perspective, really to solve three primary growth use cases. How do I improve participation? How do I improve targeting at a scale and effectiveness that's going to drive real meaningful growth? And how do I optimize my pricing process in a landscape where demand is not the only equation, serviceability is not the only equation, competitiveness is not the only location driver. It is the combination of all those attributes that matters immensely in the equation. I appreciate the chance to share a little perspective on location intelligence. I'm going to pause and turn it back to Wei for a moment.
Thank you, Ben. Yes, I said at the beginning that we'll have a poll question, and here we are. So the question is on which business challenge is most difficult for you to solve today? Is it identifying your total addressable market, or gaining competitive intelligence, or understanding your customer or prospect in depth, or determining the right partnerships, or is it pricing your deals? So now I'll give the audience between half a minute and 1 minute to make your choice. Then I'll show the results. Okay, let's see. So nearly half of you, 45% of the respondents, chose gaining competitive intelligence being the most sort of difficult challenge to tackle today. That's followed by 20% choosing understanding your customer and prospect in depth. Then there are the challenges to identify your total addressable market and define the right partnerships. Okay, I think the intelligence will be very helpful for the follow-up part of the presentation. So I'm now handing over to Deb.
Thanks, Wei. Wave is an exciting place to work. Not only do we care about our customer experience, we also care about our employees too. We want to give them the tools to be successful, to get the information they need at their fingertips. But before I get started, let me tell you who Wave is. We are a broadband cable systems company located on the West Coast with a focus in Tier 1 suburban markets in the Seattle, Portland, Sacramento, and San Francisco area. We serve residential and small businesses. We are fiber-rich network. We have two commercial divisions, our enterprise business as well as our wholesale partners. We can service small businesses to national carriers. And earlier this year, we merged with RCN Telecom Services, which has a footprint on the East Coast, as well as Grande Communications in Texas, making us the 6th largest cable operator in the U.S. We are beyond excited about this new possibility, but we also recognize that we had some challenges in our sales environment. Just like Ben alluded to, we have the ability to pull the information from various sources. We have the ability to get the data from our billing system, our CRM, pulling information from third parties, and other internal tools. But wouldn't it be great if you could find out what buildings are live, what are planned on your network, and pull it when you want to without having to use a swivel chair approach, as it were, having to go to, say, finance, construction, engineering, other sales teams to find out what tenants are in a building, what are the potential prospects there, is the building active, what's the competitive landscape. Again, we have the ability to pull this information, but wouldn't it be fantastic if we could just pull it when we wanted to without having to go to multiple locations to make it happen? So we launched our Central Repository Information project that we decided that we wanted to be able to do this and pull that information together at your fingertips. And we did it. We're excited to say phase 1 is complete. Sales and marketing now has the opportunity to pull that information about what buildings are live, what are planned, get the costing information associated with that. We eliminated the swivel chair by having an API interface to uploading the information into this repository tool for the teams. But we knew when we were outlining our roadmap and with the user excitement that we wanted to capture more information. We wanted to be able to expand on the data that we had in this initial phase 1. To give more information about our network, to give more information about the competitive landscape, give more information about whether a site transitions from off-net, near-net, to on-net. So we wanted to continue that improvement to give our teams the various information that they've been requesting for a while on demand. So our vision, again, we wanted to be able to answer any sales rep question at any time. We wanted to expand on the information that we currently had in our internal repository. We wanted to make sure that we didn't burden our IT team because, okay, let's be honest, they were nice enough to give us the internal repository, expanding on a system that we currently had in place initially, but they're not a software development team. So we wanted to make sure that whatever tool that we launched to enhance our current service, we wanted to make sure that it had API flexibility, that we can easily pull data from the multiple sources to keep it accurate and consider our true source of information. So we wanted to make sure that it was real-time updates, that we were able to verify this information in multiple sources, have an API interface to pull this information real-time, and again, answer the questions that were being asked of the various teams, and they could rely on that information for accuracy. It had to be flexible. This new solution had to be able to capture our connectivity status by address, floor, and equipment. It had to be scalable. It had to be able to grow with our network. As I said earlier, that with the RCN and Grande and Wave, our footprint needed to be captured, and we had different scenarios and different network topologies that we wanted to manage and keep track of. And the solution had to be easy and seamless to work with our existing systems. We didn't want something that was replacing our current hurdles with something that was clunky and hard to work with, to where you can't get user acceptance or user buy-in because it's worse than what you already were working with. So it had to be something that was an economical enhancement to where it saved us time. It didn't cause roadblocks, and you can trust the information and the data that was stored there. So that's why we selected Connected to Fiber. They're able to capture our networks, their locations, and they provide tenant information about a location, all at your fingertips. You didn't have to go to multiple sources to pull tenant information. You didn't have to go to multiple sources to find out the competitors in a building. They're able to support our growth plans and our network topologies, and they're able to have the API integration to where we can pull data from multiple sources and keep that information current and live and clean. And it was also looking forward to our significant return on investment, because now our sales team and our marketing teams have the data, I love saying this, at their fingertips on demand, to where they can know who's in the building, they can know what tenants are there, they know potential prospects, they're aware of the competitive landscape, they know how far this is from our network as far as what's considered on-net and near-net, so they have the information that they've been requesting all in one central place. So that's why we have location intelligence as part of our WAVE sales strategy. Can you imagine going from a KMZ, looking at a global view, drilling down to the street level, drilling down to the building, and then being able to export that detail in an Excel file? Wouldn't that be fantastic? Well, guess what? It can happen because we're doing it today. We have the ability in C2F to actually keep that information current, as I said before. We're able to track the various addresses, the various components of our network as far as what's near net, the costing information, what's planned, what's live, what's leased. We also have the ability to work with our carrier partners who are also connected to fiber partners, who have worked with them to come up with reporting functionalities that actually requested the information that they specifically want to see from a carrier partner. So we have the ability now to export reports in real time to give another carrier partner the information that they request in the format that they want it in. So it eliminates delays on asking for information about our WAVE network in the format that a carrier prefers, because we have the report structure already in place. And an exciting part for our enterprise business team is that now they can decide their prospecting area. They can customize their view. They can select particular buildings. They can find out what tenants are in a location. They can find out the prospecting opportunities there, as well as the competitive landscape to determine what locations they want to focus on, to where they can drive the reports, they can customize the reports, they can schedule the reports, and they can build their own sales street sheets because of the information that we're currently capturing and connected to fiber. So this is really an amazing opportunity for both our carrier partners as well as our enterprise business teams to get the information that they want. And since we have the API connectivity, the data is refreshed automatically as we're making sure that we're keeping up with all activity from the fiber construction team to our implementation team to our billing team, because we're refreshing that data to where what our network sees, our sales teams will also see in real time. So we're totally beyond excited about that information being live and in one place that they can export whenever they want. So my key best practices, okay, number one, when pursuing similar projects, identify data gaps and explore solutions to fill voids, allowing you to serve a greater user base and drive wider acceptance. It's important to understand what it is that you're trying to resolve, making sure that you involve all stakeholders to have an opportunity to understand their pain points. And you want to make sure that you listen carefully and understand what they're looking for and see how you and others can determine a solution to make that happen. But you have to remember the IT team, because without IT, you won't have the ability to maintain it, integrate it, or even deploy it. So you need to make sure that at all times you involve your IT team, because they're the ones to make this happen for you. They'll be the ones responsible for the maintenance. They're going to be the ones that can give you tips on how to integrate with existing systems and to make an easy rollout as well. So you want to engage them early on and when you're having the conversations with your stakeholders. And to determine your pros and cons, whether to expand on an existing repository based on what you have in place today internally, or should you enhance it or supplement it, replace it. These are discussions that you also need to have based on the economical factors involved as well as what it would take to implement. And finally, you want to find a solution that's flexible enough to meet the current and future requirements, easily integrates into your existing environment using APIs, which are ideal, and as I said before, making sure it's financially sound. So with that in mind, I just want everyone on the call today to understand it is possible to pull all the data together. It is possible to find your competitive information in one place. It is possible to know exactly what you have on your network, pull that up into one solution, export that information when you desire, and so it is possible to make it happen. And Wave Broadband is a live example of that opportunity. So Wei, I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right, thank you, Deb. Thank you, Ben. And thank you very much for the presentations. Clearly something as critical as accurate network rollout and return on investment maximization, that requires both theoretical thinking and technical practicality. So I think the audience will agree with me that your presentations have given us both. So now we move on to the Q&A section of this webinar. I can see that quite a few questions have already come in during the presentation, but we still got time, so I urge you not to be shy. So here we have the first question. I've heard other solutions that claim to have location intelligence. What is specifically different about connected to fiber? I believe that's a question for Ben.
Great, thank you, Wei. I appreciate the question from the audience. Location intelligence, from connected to fiber really differentiates itself from three different core elements. One is the authority around location. We don't just rely on a set of addresses. We've built from the ground up our view of location to really understand, the address, the lat-long coordinates of that point, the building footprint, the jurisdictional boundaries, whether it's the municipality, the state, the country, and use that all in relationship together. Two is the perspectives of location intelligence. Many solutions out there identify one aspect of what we think is important, the location data or the business tenant data, or to a limited extent, the network information data. What we believe is fundamental is really bringing those perspectives together in a single solution and making it accessible with up-to-date and constantly fed information. And that layers of perspective really, separate the solutions out there, whether it's homegrown or, from a single perspective, some of the competing thought processes. I think third is the accessibility. What we want to make sure is our customers can consume that location intelligence not only in a very visual and intelligent user interface, not only on a mobile device as they're walking into a building, but also via APIs or extracts as they need that data to append it into a CRM, to append it into inventory, to get updates from provisioning systems. And really the accessibility and curation of that location intelligence is a critical aspect.
Okay, thank you, Ben. The next question. Can you provide some insight on why you selected sales and marketing as your first use case? I believe that's for Deb.
Thanks, Wei. Actually, we took a collaborative planning approach with the various teams to understand everyone's requirements. As I said earlier, is that you want to engage your users. You want to listen to your stakeholders' requirements. And because we had all teams represented, ranging from sales, marketing, engineering, implementation, finance, in our kickoff discussions, we knew exactly where we wanted to go and how to get there. And excitingly, it was sales and marketing that we were able to kick off first. So that was our insight, is making sure that we listened to everyone's requirements and what made the most sense as we were loading the data into C2F, and marketing and sales, their data was supported first.
Okay, great. Now here is a follow-up question for you, I'm afraid.
Okay.
The question goes, how well did your sales reps react to phase 1 and phase 2 of your project once they were completed?
Okay, we began by setting realistic expectations, because when someone hears that, oh my gosh, I'm going to have all the information in one place, I want to see the moon. And so you have to set realistic expectations. What we decided to do was demo the tools early on in the process so they can see exactly the information that we were going to collect and how it would be presented. And we made sure to provide the users updates to keep them engaged throughout. So our sales team, our marketing team, they were excited. We just did a refresher training course for our business team a couple of weeks ago to keep them currently engaged, as well as showing them the additional data that we loaded. So that's always key to keeping the excitement going as you transition throughout the process. So I'm excited to say that the reaction was positive in both phases.
Great, encouraging. But stay online. The next question is also for you. So, do you envision moving? Yeah, do you envision moving beyond sales use cases? It seems like location intelligence can be used for lots of other things.
Totally agree. When we designed our roadmap and with our connected to fiber features, we intend to expand. We're doing this in stages and doing this in phases. So we're continuing to layer on the data and the network topology in the tool. So yes, we intend to support sales engineering requirements and other implementation requirements. So yes, we're continuing to enhance the data that we're storing in C2F, and absolutely, we will be using other use cases immediately. So our plans are to support our initial roadmap and continue to, even if it's on a reduced scale, as far as what information the other teams are looking for, they see the advantages of having this opportunity. So there is no use case not being represented today. It's just that we're adding more information as we layer in the network components.
Okay, great. The next question. I work a lot with IT to build data repositories and support applications. What are some of the best practices to successfully work with them or convince them to undertake a project for you? I think that's also for Deb.
Well, what I would recommend is, can you imagine if someone came up to you at your desk saying that I want the world, I want it now, not sure how you're going to get there, and then give me updates when it's complete. That's why it's important to respect IT as well, because I would recommend that you have a clear understanding of what tools you have in place today. It's easier to enhance an existing tool than designing something from scratch. Your IT team is not a software development group. They're here to maintain the tools that we currently have in place today. So what you need to do is have a clear understanding of what tools are currently there, understanding what the use cases are, and see if there's an opportunity to enhance what you currently have, and then looking outside of the possibility of purchasing a solution that easily integrates with what you currently have today. So the best way to engage IT and to get that support from them is to listen, understand what exists today, and ask for their opinions and feedback on deployment. So that's how I got it to work for me.
Okay, great. The next one is a simple one. how did you discover, how did you find Connected to Fiber?
We did our due diligence. We checked out a lot of software opportunities and vendors and technologies and solutions, and we knew what we wanted. We had a focus. We wanted to make sure it was economically feasible. We wanted to make sure it was scalable. As I said earlier in the presentation, that it was flexible. It could grow with us. So that's why we chose Connected to Fiber. They met every need that we presented to them because our network is unique, we feel, but they had the telephony background, they had the know-how, they understood the telecom space, and so we have a really great partnership, and that's why I'm excited to be on this webinar with Ben today.
Great. I'm afraid we're drawing to an end of this webinar, but we may have time for one final question. Before I ask our presenters to answer it, I'd like to reassure the audience that all the questions you've sent in are recorded. And for those questions that we don't have time to answer, our presenters will go back to you offline. I'd also like to remind everyone, as Becky said at the beginning, that a survey should pop open on your screen shortly, and we would greatly appreciate your feedback. So thank you in advance. Now the final question. Can you discuss a little more about what you mean by push to the edge and how location intelligence is needed for that use case? I believe this question is for Ben.
Sure, absolutely. I appreciate the question. What I mean by push to the edge is this fundamental shift going on in the market where large web scale companies, application providers, and content providers are all recognizing that the performance to business and consumer matters. The economics matter. And to do what they do from large data centers in the central of the country or at the edges of the country only is not the optimal strategy in today's world. They need to migrate and extend their applications, content, and services closer to the users to get the performance and the economics to deliver what they need to deliver. And this is manifested the best in the content world for consumers, but we're also seeing this shift in terms of applications to the business world, and it's a really important shift that we all should be aware of. New data centers are coming up. As a result, more connectivity options at the edge back into the core are being looked at, and it's changing the landscape out there. And location intelligence is critical to understand that perspectives once again, to look at the demand around where you need to place your edge locations, what networks are optimal to serve those locations, how businesses can consume and interact, and what the ecosystem looks like, not just from a wired perspective, but a wireless perspective, and how it all works together. And having a sound location intelligence strategy to understand the macro theme of push to the edge is an important part of driving your next growth steps.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ben. And so now that concludes our today's session. And thank you very much to our presenters, Ben and Deb, and to everyone who attended this highly informative webinar. We hope you enjoyed it and will join us for another one very soon. Enjoy the rest of the day, and goodbye.